someone close to you is lying right now. Maybe it's about where they were last night. Maybe it's about money. Maybe it's something bigger. The FBI has spent decades perfecting techniques to catch liars in interrogation rooms. By the end of this video, you'll know their most powerful methods so you can spot deception before it costs you. I'm going to show you 9 techniques that FBI agents use every single day. However, the last one is so effective that once you learn it, you'll never look at conversations the same way again. And the scary part? You've already fallen for one of these lies today without realizing it. So let's begin. The question that traps liars. Most people ask the wrong questions when they suspect a lie. If you ask something broad like, "How was your night?" the other person can dodge details easily. They can give you a vague answer that tells you nothing. If you ask, "You got home early, right?" you're actually giving them an easy escape route. They can just say yes and move on. Therefore, FBI agents use a different approach that changes everything. They ask open questions built on negative assumptions. For example, instead of asking your friend, "Did you go out last night?" say, "What kept you out so late last night?" Instantly, you'll see their mind scramble for details. Notice what happens here. You're not asking if they went out, you're assuming they did. This forces the person to either admit the truth or build a detailed lie. The more details they give, the easier it becomes to catch them slipping up later. Their brain has to work harder to keep track of the story. However, don't make it sound like an attack. Keep your tone casual and curious. Act like you're just making conversation. You want them talking freely, not shutting down and getting defensive. The moment they feel attacked, they'll stop talking completely. The 5-second window. Right after you ask a question, you have exactly 5 seconds. This is your window to catch the truth. In those 5 seconds, watch everything. Their face, their hands, their voice, their eyes. Every tiny movement matters. After 5 seconds pass, their brain has already adjusted. They've had time to think and calculate their response. They've had time to build their defenses. Therefore, you can't trust what happens after that window closes. The honest reaction is gone. But here's the key that most people don't understand. One weird behavior means nothing. Maybe they always touch their nose when thinking. Maybe looking away is just their habit. Maybe they're naturally fidgety. However, if you spot 2 or more suspicious signs in those 5 seconds, that's called a cluster. That cluster tells you something is very wrong. Look for things like contradictions in their words, dodging your question completely, touching their face repeatedly, or breaking eye contact suddenly. When these pile up in 5 seconds, you've likely caught a lie. The person's body is betraying them before their mind can catch up. Reading the baseline. But here's where most people mess up completely. Before FBI agents ask the hard questions, they do something smart. They ask easy, neutral questions first. Questions about the weather, about their day, about anything harmless. Why? Because they're studying how this person acts when they're relaxed and telling the truth. They watch tone of voice, posture, hand movements, speech patterns. They notice everything. This is the baseline. It's like taking a photograph of someone's normal behavior. Once you know someone's baseline, any change becomes obvious. If someone usually looks you in the eye but suddenly stares at the floor when you ask where they were, that shift matters. That's not their normal. If their voice usually sounds steady but starts cracking on certain topics, pay attention. If they normally use their hands when talking but suddenly go completely still, something changed. The baseline shows you what normal looks like. Therefore, anything abnormal becomes a red flag you can't miss. Without knowing the baseline, you're just guessing. With it, you're reading them like a book. The double trap. Here's a simple trick that catches liars off guard every single time. Ask about the same event twice, but change the angle slightly. First time, ask, "You went to the gym yesterday, right?" They say yes. They feel safe. Wait a few minutes. Talk about something else. Let them relax. But then circle back with, "So what exercises did you do at the gym yesterday?" If they hesitate or their answer doesn't match the first response, you've found an inconsistency. Liars struggle to keep their story straight across multiple questions. They might remember the big lie but forget the small details they made up along the way. Truth tellers don't have this problem. If they actually went to the gym, they'll tell you exactly what they did without hesitation. However, a liar has to invent details on the spot. They have to remember what they already said. They have to make sure the new details fit the old ones. It's too much mental work. Words that give them away. This next trick is one even trained interrogators rely on. When people lie, they choose words differently. They become more careful, more vague. You'll hear phrases like, I think, maybe, probably, or I guess. These words give them escape routes. If you challenge them later, they can say, well, I wasn't sure. They never committed to anything concrete. However, this alone doesn't prove lying. Some people just speak this way naturally. They're cautious in general. Therefore, watch for when these vague words appear. If they show up only during certain parts of the story, especially the important parts, that's your signal to dig deeper. If someone is confident about the small details but suddenly vague about the crucial moment, something's wrong. Their language is protecting them. The topic dodge. We've all been lied to before, a friend, a coworker, even someone we trusted. Watch what happens when you touch a sensitive subject. If someone suddenly tries changing the topic, they're uncomfortable. Maybe they ask you a question about something completely different. Maybe they remember something urgent they need to tell you. Maybe they suddenly notice something in the room. This dodge is a defense mechanism. They're trying to steer you away from dangerous ground before they accidentally reveal something they want hidden. The redirect is their shield. If these tricks are already blowing your mind, make sure you hit like because we're only halfway through the FBI's best-kept secrets. Also, drop a comment below telling me which technique surprised you most. Your engagement helps more people learn how to protect themselves. Now, let's keep going. Breaking their focus. Lying takes mental energy, serious mental energy. The person has to invent details, remember what they already said, and avoid contradicting themselves. Their brain is working overtime just to keep the story alive. Therefore, if you interrupt them right in the middle of their story with a completely different question, you increase that mental load even more. Try this. While they're explaining something, suddenly ask, wait, what were you doing right before that happened? This forces them to reorganize their entire story in their head. They rewind, they switch tracks, and that's when cracks start to show. Watch what happens next. If they seem confused or if they restart with details that don't match what they said before, you've likely caught them in a lie. The best moment to interrupt is when they're deep in their narrative, fully focused on keeping their story straight. After the interruption, just say, okay, sorry, keep going. But then watch very carefully how they continue. Do they pick up exactly where they left off? Or do they restart from a different point? Do the details still match? The false detail test. This technique is sneaky but incredibly powerful. Slip a wrong detail into the conversation on purpose. Say something like, you said it was Tuesday, but wasn't the store closed that day? Here's what happens next. Someone telling the truth will correct you immediately. They'll say, no, it was Wednesday, or the store was actually open. They're confident because they know what really happened. However, a liar often agrees with your false detail. Why? Because they're afraid that disagreeing with you might make their whole story fall apart. They'd rather accept your version than risk looking suspicious by pushing back. They think you know something they don't. They think you're testing them, so they go along with whatever you say. This reveals the lie instantly. The timeline trap. Ask for specific times. What time did you leave? What time did you arrive? People lying struggle with timelines because they're making them up as they go. Their answers often don't make sense mathematically. If they say they left at 8, arrived at 8:30, but the drive actually takes an hour, something's wrong. The math doesn't add up. If they claim they were somewhere for 20 minutes, but describe activities that would take an hour, the timeline breaks. Timelines don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Therefore, when someone's timeline has holes, their story probably does too. Truth always fits reality. Lies never do. The final piece. Now here's what most people miss completely. These techniques work best when you combine them. Use the baseline to spot changes. Use the 5-second rule to catch clusters of deception. Use timeline questions and double traps together. Stack them, layer them. However, there's one more thing that matters more than all of these techniques combined. Your instinct. Deep down, you usually know when something feels off. These FBI techniques just give you proof of what your gut already suspected. Trust that feeling. When multiple techniques point to the same conclusion, you're not being paranoid. You're being smart. You're being observant. Remember that person who was lying to you at the start of this video? Now, you know exactly how to catch them. The truth always leaves fingerprints. Thanks for watching, and until next time.